Hello and welcome back to Jules Math Tools. In our session today, this is part 2 on converting a proper fraction into a percentage. But in this session, we're going to be reducing our fraction first before we change it into percentage. And if you're ready, let's get started. So in our example today, we are converting the fraction 14/24 into a percentage, but we're going to first be reducing our fraction into its lowest term before we begin our multiplication. Now, in reducing your fraction, remember that you have to find a common factor between both 14 and 24 because both of these numbers have to be divided by the exact same number. And if you're not aware of how to find your factors of these numbers, remember that you're thinking about the numbers or the different way that you can multiply to get these numbers. So for example, with 14, the different ways that I can multiply to get 14 would be 1 times 14, and then I can also multiply 2 times 7. And these numbers would be my factors of 14. Now with 24, I can multiply 1 times 24. I can also multiply 2 times 12 to get 24. We can also multiply 3 times 8 to get 24. And lastly, we can multiply 4 times 6 to get 24 as well. So these numbers would be all the factors of 24. And in finding a factor that you can divide both of these numbers by, remember that it has to be the exact same factor. So we can see here that they have the factor of 1 in common. But as we know, we won't be using 1 because any number divided by 1 will give us the same number back. So that means if I divide 14 by 1, I'm going to get 14 back. So 1 will not be used whenever you are looking for a highest common factor of a number to reduce your fractions. So the next common factor that they have, we can see also is 2. 2 would be their highest common factor, and 2 would also be the last factor that these two numbers have in common. So because 2 is the highest common factor for 14 and 24, that means that I can now reduce this fraction by dividing both parts of the fraction by the number 2. So we'll be dividing both parts of this fraction by 2. So 14 divided by 2 will give us 7. 24 divided by 2 will equal to 12. So now that we have simplified this fraction, let's go on and rewrite our fraction so that we can begin our calculation. So we're rewriting our fraction. We have 7/12 being multiplied to 100%. Now here's another good thing. Because we are working now with even numbers of 12 and 100, I know that with looking at these numbers, just if you were to list your factors again for 112 like we did here, a common factor that 112 have in common is going to be 4. So I am now going to further simplify this fraction by dividing my 12 by 4. And I would also be dividing my 100 by 4. So 12 divided by 4 will equal to 3. And when I divide 100 by 4, that will give me 25. So the same way I know that there are 4 quarters in a dollar, I know that there's going to be 25 fours in 100. So just thinking about money sometimes helps us to work through the questions a little bit easier because it links the common information that we know. So let's rewrite our fraction for one last time. So we'll have 7/3 being multiplied to our 25%. And for this fraction, I will not be including the 1 in the denominator. I do want us to learn to build on those skills that we already have so that we can become better mathematicians. So we are now going to be multiplying my 25 times 7. And as always, I always go through the working for my persons who are not as quick as everybody else. So 5 times 7 is 35. We put our 5 and carry the 3. 7 times 2 is 14, and 14 plus 3 is 17. So we now have 175% in our numerator, and our 3 will return to the denominator. So at this point, we are now going to dive into our long division, where we will be dividing our 3 into our 175%. So 3 can't divide into 1 since 1 is less than 3. So 0 times 3 is equal to 0. 1 minus 0 is equal to 1. We're going to bring down that 7, changing 1 into 17. Let me clean that up. So 1 into 17. 3 divides into 17 5 times. 5 times 3 is 15. When 17 subtracts 15, we get the difference of 2. We're going to bring down our 5, changing 2 into 25. 3 will divide into 25 8 times. 8 times 3 gives us 24. 25 minus 25 minus 24 gives us the difference of 1. We're now going to add in our decimal point. Remember that decimal point is always added after we've divided into all of the numbers that were given to us in our numerator. Then we'll add in our 0, bring down that 0, and change my 1 into 10. So 3 will divide into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is equal to 9. 10 minus 9 gives us a difference of 1, and you can tell by us getting 1 again. That means that we will have a loop with our 10, which will keep repeating, and we'll continue getting 1 as our remainder. That tells me that my 3 is also going to continue repeating in my quotient, so I can stop there in my division. And if you've watched enough of my videos, you know I like to divide to 1 digit behind the decimal point to try and get a little bit more of an accurate answer. So we have 58 and 3/10%. And if I decided to round this off to the nearest whole number, this would simply just equal to 58%. Since my 3 is less than 5, that means my number gets rounded off. Okay, so there you have it. We just converted our fraction 14/24 into a percentage by first reducing our question. So we reduced our numbers to its simplest form and then performed our multiplication. And remember, with this type of question, if you're good at reducing your fractions, you could have done all of your working in one step. Remember, I just go through the separate steps so that persons who may not be good at simplifying fraction, or maybe their first time trying to simplify a fraction, would be able to follow along the steps. But remember, always work to your strengths. If you can do all the working in one step, by all means do that. But continue to get some additional practice in, and as always, I'll see you right here in the next video on Jules Math Tools, where we make math easy.